I lined up old seasoning labels next to the new ones, brand after brand. The lists got longer every decade, and the ingredients they added aren't spices. They're there for the factory, not for you. I pulled the ingredient labels for the biggest seasoning brands in America. The old versions and the current ones side by side. I'm Mama Health, and this is where we read the label so the label stops reading us. By the end, you'll know the 10 brands where the ingredient list quietly grew, the 3 worth keeping, and the one thing the internet has gotten wrong about this aisle for 50 years. One thing first. This is public research plus my own opinion, not medical advice. I'm your friend on the internet, not your doctor. So if you're watching your blood pressure, that conversation belongs with someone who can see your chart. This is for asking better questions in your own kitchen. Okay, cabinet open. And while it's open, here's the thing the internet got wrong for 50 years. MSG was never the villain in this aisle. What actually crept into these bottles is a lot quieter, and it starts with the cheapest one on the shelf. Great Value Seasoned Salt, Walmart's own store brand, costs half what the name brand does and sits right next to it. Here's what fills that price gap. 10 years ago, seasoned salt was salt, paprika, maybe garlic and onion powder. Pull the current label and you'll find an anti-caking agent, tricalcium phosphate. Its job is to keep the salt pouring instead of clumping in a humid kitchen. That's FDA approved, and it sits in plenty of staples. And the sodium adds up fast, about 380 milligrams in a single quarter teaspoon. So you're paying seasoning prices for an anti-clump powder and a big shot of salt, and nothing on the front of the bottle tells you that. So that one's padding, not poison. But padding you didn't ask for is still worth knowing about. The next bottle is where we settle the MSG question once, because it puts it right on the label. Goya Sazon, those little packets that turn rice orange, lists monosodium glutamate, MSG, as the very first ingredient, right there on the front. So it's the perfect bottle to settle this once, and I'm not letting this turn into another fear video. MSG is short for monosodium glutamate, and the FDA puts it in the same safety category as salt and baking powder. Decades of research never found the reactions people blamed on it. The whole Chinese restaurant syndrome panic from the 1960s traces back to one letter. Not a study, a letter from a writer with no research behind it. And it stuck to an entire cuisine, while Western foods full of the same glutamate got a pass. 50 years of panic. Off one letter. That part still bothers me. So Sazon isn't a problem because of the MSG. What I'd flag here is the rest of the packet, the yellow 5 and red 40 doing the colouring work. But the MSG is the thing people throw it out over, and that's the wrong reason. Hold that thought, because the real headline on MSG is waiting at number 1. Old Bay is bigger than seasoning at this point. Crab boils, fries, popcorn, the yellow tin everyone knows on site. Old Bay belongs to McCormick. And like the rest of McCormick's blends, the modern label carries more processing aids than the original 1939 recipe. Silicon dioxide again. That same anti-caking agent is going to keep showing up on this list because it's cheap. That's 2 with anti-caking agents. Keep count with me because that number climbs. Nobody measures Tony Chaches. You shake the green can till it feels right. That's the whole culture around it, and Louisiana built half its cooking pride on that one blend. The original blend was simple: salt, red pepper, black pepper, garlic. The current original Creole seasoning carries a longer list, silicon dioxide included. And salt sits at the top, so the sodium climbs fast, exactly because nobody measures this can. That's not a criticism of the culture. It's a reason to look at the number once, so the habit stays a choice. Here's where the pattern starts naming names. Zatarain's New Orleans-style Creole seasoning is the New Orleans staple, and its label carries something the old blends never did: Flavor enhancers called disodium inosinate and guanylate, sitting right next to added sugar and dextrose. Those two enhancers are cousins to MSG. They do the same savory boosting job. Nothing dangerous about them either. But notice what they tell you. This is a factory decision, not a kitchen one. And keep the name Zatarain's in your head, because you're about to find out who owns it. If one bottle on this list defines "that's in my kitchen," it's this one. There's one in my cabinet right now. The orange cap has been in American kitchens since 1938 on barbecue, the fried chicken dredge, eggs. Lawry's is also under McCormick, and this is the bottle where the before and after gets loud. Put an older Lawry's label next to the current one, and the list is just longer. Flow agents like tricalcium phosphate got added over the decades as the blend moved onto bigger factory lines. The seasoning itself still tastes like Lawry's. What changed is everything wrapped around it to keep the factory happy. And when brands like this get asked about the additives, the answer is always the same script. Reformulation reflects food safety and manufacturing standards, not health concerns. Which, translated, means we didn't do this for you. We did it for the production line. It just lands on your dinner anyway. Small detail. That's 4 bottles now with the anti-caking pattern. And it's not a conspiracy, it's a supply chain habit. Same fix, different bottle. Because once one company owns enough of the shelf, the ingredient list becomes an efficiency decision instead of a flavor decision. By now the pattern has a name. Remember Zatarain's and Old Bay and Lawry's. Same parent company. McCormick owns all 3, plus a huge share of the rest of the blended seasoning aisle, house brands and name brands both. So a lot of the choice on that shelf is one company competing with itself. They win either way. Independent testing keeps flagging heavy metals in some spice products. Arsenic, lead, cadmium. But that traces back to where the raw spice is grown, not to any one brand's recipe. Plants pull heavy metals out of the soil. Some growing regions carry more than others, and it lands on every label that buys from those regions. So this is a farming story, not one logo's fault, which is exactly why no single brand switch fixes it. Adobo is the shaker that empties faster than anything else in the cabinet. Chicken, rice, beans, everything. Goya's Adobo all-purpose seasoning puts salt and an anti-caking agent right at the top of the label before a single spice. So the danger here was never MSG. This flagship Adobo doesn't even list it. It's the same thing we've seen all the way down this list, sodium stacking. 1/4 teaspoon shake is already about 350 milligrams of sodium. A real bite out of your day. And in a lot of households, this shaker touches every meal several times a day. Multiply that across a week, and no serving line on the label can warn you, because the serving line only counts 1 shake. Now the one that gets me, because it hides in plain sight. Bardia Complete Seasoning, the yellow and red bottle in every Latin and Caribbean cabinet, is sold as the clean all-in-one, the wholesome one. The bottle that's supposed to be simpler than the rest, and it lists monosodium glutamate, MSG, right there on the label by name, plus tricalcium phosphate, the same anti-caking agent we keep meeting. Now, you already know how I feel about MSG. It isn't the boogeyman, but that's exactly why this one lands here so high. It's the bottle marketed as the trustworthy staple for Southern and Caribbean cooking. And it's carrying the exact ingredient people swear they threw out, right there in plain sight. Then there's the salt. Salt is up near the top, so a 1/4 teaspoon already carries a real chunk of a day's sodium. And because complete means it's your only seasoning, nobody uses a light hand with it. 3 or 4 shakes over 1 pot, and the number stops being small. Ask Badia about the salt, and the answer is always some version of, use it to taste. Translation, we printed the number, and what you do with the shaker is your problem. Not a villain. Just a bottle that isn't nearly as plain as the marketing wants you to believe. And here's the headline I told you was coming. Number one isn't a seasoning with a little MSG hiding in it. Accent flavor enhancer, basically ISMSG monosodium glutamate, is the whole product. One ingredient on the entire label. So why is it number one if MSG isn't the villain? Because this is the purest version of the whole story. You're standing in the seasoning aisle, and this bottle is one additive sold to you at seasoning prices, sitting where an actual spice blend should be. That's the pattern from the top of this list, stripped all the way down to a single ingredient. No spice pretending, just the enhancer. And it's the bottle a whole generation threw out in a panic. Off one letter, off a myth. Not because it was dangerous, because a rumor said so. That's the number one lesson of this aisle. So I put the bottle that proves it right at the top. Number one isn't the scariest. It's the most honest about what these products actually are. So tally it up. None of these 10 are secretly poisoning you. What they share is padding you're paying for, sodium you're not tracking, and a shelf where a few companies own more of the bottles than you'd ever guess. That's a more useful story than everything is toxic, because now you know the 3 things to check on any label. Now, the keepers. Number 3. Single ingredient spices. Plain paprika, plain garlic powder, plain cumin. No blend means no filler and no anti-caking agent, because there's nowhere left to hide one. You build the flavor yourself, and you control every gram of sodium. Number 2. Feisty Spices. This is a Black woman-owned brand out of Atlanta, founded by Erica Gillespie, and it ships nationwide. Their Soul Food Sunday all-purpose seasoning has no MSG and no anti-caking agent on the label. The kind of label you can read out loud in one breath. Number 1. Your own blend. Yes, that's a swerve, but it's the honest one. The best brand isn't on the shelf. Mix your own in a jar from the single spices at number 3. It's cheaper per ounce than nearly every bottle on the avoid list. It never quietly changes on you over 10 years, and there's nowhere for a filler to hide because you added every ingredient yourself. Grandma's Blend was never a marketing department. That's exactly why it worked. Now here's the 30-second version you can do tonight. No lab required. Open your cabinet and count the red and yellow caps. That's roughly the McCormick family tree standing in your kitchen. Then grab your most used bottle, flip it over, and read the first 3 ingredients. If a filler or an anti-caking agent shows up before the actual spice, that's your answer on that one. Last, take the sodium number and multiply it by how many times you use that bottle in a week, not per serving. That weekly number is the one that was never printed on the label. That's it. Just the label you already own. Comment your thoughts down below. If this helped, hit like and subscribe. And check out this video Mama Health made for you.